Think Tech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Duke Oishi.
And I'm Donna Blanchard.
In our show this time, we'll take a tour through Kaka'ako to check up on the status of the various issues and development.
Chris Letham, recently an unsuccessful candidate for state senator representing the district, was kind enough to take us around.
First, we met Chris at the Starbucks at the intersection of Ward and Awahi, just across the street from Ward Center, which will be torn down to make way for condo development.
He gave us an update and expressed his views on a number of the projects and issues in play in the development of Kaka'ako. It was an eye-opener to hear what he had to say.
What they've really been focusing on is just getting up these structures first, and I have a feeling the reason that they're focusing on that is because that's where the money is. Obviously, these are condos that are in the millions of dollars that local people are not going to be buying. They're going to be bought by offshore buyers, either in California or in China or Asia, places like that. So you can't really, I think what you really can anticipate is after some of these structures have gone up in phase 1 and phase 2, then you're going to see them come in, knock down these facilities, and then you're going to start to see the streets being redesigned and parkways and such developed. A lot of the development that's going in is going to be called mixed-use development. And so that means that the lower level or the lowest level or the lower levels are going to be set aside for retail. I think you're going to see something perhaps similar to what went on in Waikiki along Seaside Avenue or Beach Walk, where you're going to have a level of retail there. It's certainly going to be very different than what it is today. I would suppose you could expect it to be rents to be much higher. Once you take down the parking structure here in a Ward warehouse, there's not going to be nearly the amount of parking available as there has been historically. Now, you can also imagine that's going to impact the businesses that aren't just right in here, but the surrounding business as well. Because, you know, these businesses draw traffic into the community. And of course, that means all the ancillary businesses that exist that maybe you don't come to shop for, that are here, that you get to know about while you're here, you know, those businesses are also going to be impacted. The things that people do for recreational activities in the community, you can imagine that they're going to be impacted as well. Without parking, you can't come to the theater. It's interesting because it was one of the primary issues for the gubernatorial race. You know, everybody was talking about it. I was talking about it. We were talking about the fact that the development here has been really focused on luxury condos instead of workplace housing or housing for the people who live and work in the community. And so, you know, you really have to ask yourself, and then of course in the second phase when Howard Hughes Corporation came to HCDA, at one of the discussions they were asked, what about the reserve housing, which is another term. By the way, they don't call it affordable housing anymore, no, they call it reserved housing, because it really isn't affordable. It's based at 130% of the average income. And so, of course, that means it's out of range for most people. So now they call it reserve housing. Of course, it means it's going to be slightly a slight lower price than the rest of the housing, but still not really in the range of affordable housing.
We continue to see these types of issues not effectively being addressed by the HCDA. And of course, we know the HCDA sort of gunned through the last little bit of the approvals before the new administration came into power. Those approvals should have waited until January, when there would have been a new HCDA administration on board, and that would have given the community more time and a better opportunity to vet the process and take a look at the variances that the HCDA have been asking for. The homeless problem is now going back to the same old way it was before. It's not being effectively addressed. The things that were talked about during the campaign haven't really come to fruition. We are seeing homelessness still the huge problem that it was before. And although there was one structure that was approved by HCDA, that's going to be a 70-unit structure built on something like a 10,000 square foot lot. That's going to be the first of what they call micro housing units. But we're still looking at a year to 2 years out before that type of housing will actually start to become available. In the meantime, we need to develop interim solutions that work for the community and work for the homeless, the people that are homeless here in our area. Enough talk. We need to actually start doing something about it. We need to be building something like 3,400 units, condominium units a year, just to keep up with the growth in families, without even considering what's going on in Kaka'ako. So for us to build 3,400 units and then still have to build more units on top of that to accommodate the homeless people, other homeless people that seem to be coming in from the mainland, because by the way, we are a destination for homeless people too, not just vacationers. So we really have to take a look at a lot of our regulatory language and focus on what we can do to create structures that support innovation and opportunity for development. You know, I haven't really heard much discussion about the rail as much as I've heard about the rail stations. You know, when we talk about the rail and the impact that the rail stations are going to have, traffic coming in and out of the stations, where are people going to park? Is it going to create an unfair sort of advantage for businesses that set up around the rails? Is it going to bring in new business? And of course you have the issue of the last mile solution. That means the people that are going to use the rail aren't necessarily going to be stopping at Ala Moana. They're going to want to travel on to UH or to some of the private schools that exist in the area, businesses in Waikiki. So we really haven't had that discussion, and that discussion needs to happen sooner rather than later, because the last mile solution is really going to set the stage for whether the rail is a success or a boondoggle. Now the question is, are there going to be the kind of jobs here? Are we building an economic engine to support this type of lifestyle? You know, one of the good news is that HTDC has signed a memorandum of understanding, and they're going to be working to bring in a sort of a base plate for technology. You know, part of the Kaitana administration was to build out in Kaka'ako, Makai, a sort of high technology area. Now, hopefully, under the Ige administration, we will see that dream or that vision continue, because that is going to be an imperative. Just like we need to bring in more fiber optic into Hawaii, and again, that's part of building that high technology infrastructure. We've got to do these things right.
Then we took a drive around Kaka'ako, including Kaka'ako Makai and Mauka, to see how Kaka'ako is changing these days and to see the progress of the various construction sites.
Howard Hughes Corporation has gotten approval now for the second phase of their development. So we can anticipate that we're going to have 2 high-rise buildings here. These were, of course, 2 of the buildings where they had asked for an additional height limit variance. So we're going to anticipate these being quite tall. To the left of us is the Pier 1 project. That's going to be knocked down and putting up another condo there. I believe after that condo goes up, we can anticipate seeing some drastic changes to the roadways. I think a lot of people who've grown up and have lived in Kaka'ako through the years now realize that their lifestyle is going to change. And the people who used to come down here and drive down here from around the island are now going to find parking. There's been some questions about where they're going to put the Obama Library, and if they do put it in over here, then I believe it's this area right over here that we're going to see that development go on. Of course, if that happens, that means anytime there's dignitaries coming into town, this roadway will be blocked. Surfers will lose access to the ocean. As you can see, we still have a ongoing homeless issue. It looks like they've added a somewhat more permanent bathroom facility over here. Sort of an ad hoc structure. The community would like to see this area that now is owned by OHA, or is considered OHA land, to remain public park and open public park area. If we don't figure out what to do with it, that other entities, other people, even from our own city, county, and state government, are going to try and find ways to utilize this park space for their own needs rather than leaving it for the public and the community to enjoy. There's going to be additional development in this area. I don't believe it will be high-rise units, however, because the height limit in this area is much lower. I do know that OHA, with the help of Senator Rickwood Galateria, did introduce legislation last year to allow OHA to build residential construction properties. However, that bill did not pass, thankfully. Well, you know, one of the things that I will say that is exciting about what's going on in this community is what the high-tech community is doing. The high-tech community has been putting up more
working with more startups, more incubators, more social or community workspaces. And this is sort of creating sort of a new renaissance in the small business arena. This is the old CompUSA site. It's now under full-blown construction. You can see they're now shutting down the parking structure to do some additional development in here. I know there was a great pizza place back there before, and it's no longer here. These are all closed down now. These were all startup businesses or small little community businesses that were thriving, and now they're going to have to go look for new places to operate from. Here's the Gold Bond building. It looks like it's under a major renovation as well. This kind of development is what you would consider smart development and does serve the needs of the community. And that's really, when we talk about smart development, Jay, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about building infrastructure, commercial infrastructure, residential infrastructure that is for the people who live and work in Kaka'ako. And these are solutions that help our community to grow and improve the quality of life for the people that live and work here. These are buildings, relatively new structures that have gone up. There's another facility going up where the old advertiser building was. The second phase of that structure has now been improved, and if they haven't begun construction, we'll begin construction shortly. So this is Ke'olelai. These are very expensive units. You know, there's a concept called viewways. You know, and the idea of viewways is, you know, of giving people a sort of a view portal from where they live, as you know, to ensure that they've got nice views and that the views are enjoyable and they're not looking in from one unit to the next. You know, that was one of the concepts that has been talked about. Unfortunately, with the sort of helter-skelter development that's gone on here, those viewways have been somewhat ignored. It's really going to require, I think, a considerable change in the culture of getting around. Our driving culture, our transportation culture, is by necessity going to have to change to alternative vehicles, whether they be shared vehicles, shared cars like zip cars. We're going to find that bicycles, we're going to have much higher dependency on bicycles or electric vehicles, which are going to leave a much smaller footprint. That's going to have to become an imperative. The impact of the culture of having another 15 to 20,000 more cars on the road is just going to have a horrible impact on the quality of life. We've got great little events that go on here where we close off the streets and people come together and they serve all kinds of really fantastic food.
Finally, we went to Ground Zero. That is the intersection of Pohukaina and Cook Street, and stood under a tree at the Mauka Diamond Head corner of Mother Waldron Park to hear his further thoughts about what this all means.
Well, I love the artwork. It really shows the vitality of our community and the artists in our community. One of the things that we're going to continue to see is more high-rise condos going up right here, and of course that view will be effectively, the incredible view that you have is effectively going to be diminished. There's a sort of a policy that you build so many, I think it's 2 acres of park space per 1,000 residents in the community. I think that's the policy of the city and county. Of course, with the development that's been slated by Howard Hughes and Kamehameha Schools, we don't believe that they're going to have anywhere near that much park space available. Park space is what makes a community a community. It's where people gather, it's where children play, it's where people sit around and chat and talk about the things that are going on in their lives. And that's really what we want to retain, and that's why we need to have smart development in Kaka'ako. There has been an ongoing problem with the sewage, the smell coming from the sewage backing up into the streets, coming up through the manhole covers. Clearly, this is not something that people should have to contend with. You know, those issues should have been addressed earlier on. So far, the Department of Education hasn't released any kind of study to talk about the impact or the associated cost with bringing in that many more people into this area. Traffic is going to be a problem. Of course, Kaka'ako right now is a place where a lot of people come to get their cars serviced. Those people are going to be impacted. So the question is,
Where are you going to take your car when you need your car repaired? We had an association called for Kaka'ako Makai. It was a community association that was founded to be able to provide some feedback to HCDA in the past. Unfortunately, a bill passed a couple of years ago that was introduced by our senator that dismantled that organization's ability to provide useful and informative feedback. Now that we have a new administration, hopefully there'll be more input from the community, and we can ask some of these developers to go back to the drawing board, re-examine the infrastructure and the need for infrastructure, building out accommodations, workforce housing that accommodates the people who live and work in the community that we can afford to buy. And if we have that, then this change in administration will have been a very positive thing. You know, the homeless problem has existed for nearly 25 years in Kaka'ako in a pervasive way. I've got articles that were written back in in the 90s talking about the homeless problem when the Japanese had come in and started buying up real estate in large amounts, and we had a homeless problem then. So 25 years of talking about it, you know, it's enough talk. It's time to take action, and I think we can accomplish that. But it is going to take a concerted effort by everybody. It goes back to what I discussed earlier about having reform in the regulatory language and the statutory language, making sure that financing is available, and also working with working with the business community, because you know what, they are an important and a key component to having a successful community. We did a survey. We asked people, did you vote? And when people said that they didn't vote, we asked them why. A couple things came up. One of them I thought was quite funny is some people said to me that they didn't find any one candidate interesting enough to risk jury duty for, and the other and the other one was that they just felt like that no matter what they did, that they weren't going to have an impact. But what I say to people is, voting is the beginning of your civic duty. It's not the end of it. If you want to have a community where your children can grow up and be a part of something special, then get engaged, become part of this community. Waikiki, Kaka'ako, this is the heart and the lungs of Honolulu and of this island, and so it has an impact on our economy, our well-being, and also the economy of your children, because remember, your children live here. They have a vested interest in the success of our community. And the economic engine, the innovation that comes with people working together, especially in the high-tech community, which I'm so excited to see that ecosystem continue to grow, is that these are the people who are working to create the opportunities and the jobs and the careers of the future.
Kaka'ako certainly seems to be moving right along. There are a number of construction sites and cranes dotting the horizon, and we know a number of approvals are granted for projects in the last days of the Abercrombie administration, just before David Ige's inauguration. What does this mean?
It now remains the business of David Ige's administration to take a hard look at what HCDA did during the Abercrombie administration and exactly what is planned and what is going on in the development of Kaka'ako.
Kaka'ako is the biggest development area in the downtown of the city and will redefine the city and thus the state. It therefore behooves us to follow the action and take a walk every now and then with Chris Letham or others to keep current on developments, including the projects being built, the cost of housing and retail spaces, the streets, parking, public places, infrastructure, schools, and so many other things that are at issue for and in connection with this jewel in our city's crown.
Of course, the campaigns and elections in which many of the candidates raised issues about Kaka'ako are now over. Will those issues be forgotten, or will the people of the city and state make an effort to be involved in the process? The jury is still out on that, but clearly the better course for everyone is to stay current and be involved in the redevelopment process. One way or the other, it will touch every one of us.
And now let's take a look at our Think Tech calendar of events going forward.
Think Tech broadcasts its talk shows live on the internet from noon to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon. If you missed a show or want to replay or share any show, they're all archived on YouTube.
Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links, or to join our email list and get these links and program advisories on our upcoming shows.
We also invite you to be a part of our live audience in our downtown studio in Pioneer Plaza. Contact jay@thinktechhawaii.com. Raise your awareness in every way on Think Tech.
And now, here's Donna with this week's Think Tech commentary.
I'm Donna Blanchard, and this is a Think Tech commentary. I'd like to talk about the next presidential library. New York, Chicago, and Hawaii are currently putting together bids to host the President Obama Library. According to the New York Associated Press, knowing that the future library will be a prominent tourist attraction and historical site, each community is offering the president prime real estate, financial backing, and grand visions for what his library could look like. Each bid is coming from a university. President Obama was raised in Hawaii, received his bachelor's degree from Columbia, and rose to political influence in Chicago, so I guess all have reasonable claim to his library. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio already stated that they'd be happy to be a part of the broader library project. I think they know they don't really have serious consideration, so I'm throwing them out of the race now. Chicago has two universities vying for consideration, the University of Chicago and the University of Illinois at Chicago. The President and First Lady have no direct ties to UIC, so they're tossed out of the race as well. I think the only two that are serious contenders are the University of Chicago and our University of Hawaii. The University of Chicago is a beautiful little campus located smack dab in the middle of a rotten neighborhood, Hyde Park. The university commissioned a study estimating that the project would create 1,900 jobs, bring $220 million in annual economic impact, and 800,000 annual visitors. If that's realistic, that would mean a lot to Hyde Park. Of course, presidential libraries are only as popular as those presidents were when they left office. Ronald Reagan's and Bill Clinton's record high annual attendance, while the Hoover and Nixon libraries' attendance is dismal. The proposed site for the library here is along the coast in Kaka'ako, another neighborhood in need of recovery. Hawaii plans include a think tank and Young Leadership Academy, and of course, our natural stepping stone to Asia. FDR originally established a presidential library as a place to house all of the papers and other materials he had amassed during his time in office. He thought it prudent to archive these someplace safe. He raised private funds to build and open the library, and the National Archive System maintains it. That tradition continues throughout all presidential libraries today. If the goal of the library is to increase tourism for the vying cities, then we should root for Hawaii. Chicago boasts 46 million annual tourists. Hawaii, only 8 million. If convenient access to the breadbasket of our country is the goal, then cheer for Chicago. But if access to Asia is important, vote for Hawaii. I've been to both Hyde Park and Kaka'ako. If you haven't been to the south side of Chicago or a similarly crime-ridden and impoverished neighborhood of a major metropolitan city, you cannot imagine what it is like. It's scary. There is no place I know of in Hawaii that compares to the danger you darn near taste driving through such a neighborhood. This could help Hyde Park. That's a big vote for Chicago. And frankly, half of the Presidential Library Foundation's board are Chicagoans. And Michelle Obama's former chief of staff is running the bid by the University of Chicago, where the president taught law and the First Lady served as Associate Dean of Student Services and Vice President for Community and External Affairs. I will also mention here that President Obama's parents both attended the University of Hawaii. So Chicago and Hawaii are both serious contenders. The winner will be announced in March. Personally, my hope is that President Obama finishes his term strong enough so that all of this really matters. I'm Donna Blanchard, and this has been a Think Tech commentary. We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of Think Tech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Okay, Donna, that wraps up this week's edition of Think Tech. Remember, you can watch Think Tech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like JFI Dell does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv.
Definitely, Duke. For lots more Think Tech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on Think Tech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a guest or volunteer, a producer or intern, and help us reach Hawaii.
Thanks so much for joining us on Think Tech and for supporting tech, energy, diversification, and globalism in Hawaii. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. I'm Duke Oishi. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Donna Blanchard. See you next time.